concept note is that there's increasing interest in MENA country offices for UNICEF in working on public finance related issues for children, ranging from investment cases to engagement in budgetary processes and increasingly even interest in public expenditure tracking and so forth. And this is in a context where our region has changed in the last 4 or 5 years. Where increasing opportunities have opened up for engaging in public finance for children related work, where this was not really a possibility in many countries before that, which is why it's been the part of our social policy, social inclusion agenda in the region that has, started the latest compared to, say, social protection or poverty analysis. Nonetheless, today we are positioned in a way to engage more substantively in this area, and we felt that it would be useful if we could take a few minutes to recap where UNICEF's strategic and corporate agenda on this issue lies. So that will be the first presentation that Fania will undertake jointly with our colleague from HQ, Nima Fala, who has kindly agreed to join us at a very ungodly hour in New York. So thank you very much once again, Nima, to try and explain what the corporate agenda for public finance for children at UNICEF represents, so as to be a sort of refresher for colleagues in the region. And then also Nima will try to flesh out a little bit where there have been some strategic shifts, subtle but important shifts in the agenda with our deeper experiences and richer experiences in public finance work since the last MTSP. So that will be the first presentation. After that, we will probably take a few minutes to answer any 1 or 2 burning questions, and then move on quite soon to the second presentation. And this will be our opportunity to feedback to you, colleagues, on the capacity and needs assessment, which you might remember we had conducted at the end of July, early August, and Fania had been in touch with you on a quantitative survey, and 2 also with some colleagues on detailed qualitative surveys, to try and flesh out the level of familiarity of our colleagues in country offices working on public finance related issues, not just social inclusion colleagues, social policy colleagues, but also sectoral colleagues from other sectors interested or engaged in this type of work, to assess the level of familiarity on the one hand, and on the other hand to try and assess also what the capacity and needs are in terms of where capacity might need to be strengthened and so forth. And based on that, we've already initiated some action going forward, which I'll brief you on at the end of that presentation. But that will be the second presentation. And the third presentation, which is very much in line with our attempts to give the webinars a very a concrete feel in terms of what kind of public finance for children work is already happening in country offices. We're featuring a country presentation on the child budgeting analysis that was undertaken by the Yemen country office. A very exciting piece of work, and actually very timely because it's being launched very soon, but Buthaina will speak more to that. So that will also be about 10 minutes. So we'll have 10 minutes for each presentation, with time for 1-2 minutes for any burning questions between presentations, and a longer period for some Q&A and discussion of about 20-25 minutes at the very end. So if anybody has any feedback on the agenda or would like to suggest anything else, please, you're very welcome to comment. Otherwise, we shall commence. Okay. So it seems there are no comments at the moment. I also just want to take a recap of colleagues who are present in the call. In addition to Fania, myself, and Nima, we have Buthaina from Yemen, who will be presenting, as I explained earlier. Isam from the Gao office has joined us from Riyadh. I see that Abdullah has just joined us from the Djibouti country office. And we have Leonardo from the Egypt country office, and Matteo from the Iran country office. So if colleagues have no further comments, I shall just pass the floor to Fania, who shall start the presentation on the corporate directions and what the public finance for children agenda represents for UNICEF. Over to you, Fania.
Thank you so much. Good day or good morning, everybody. So basically, as Saman said, now we're going to talk about strategic corporate directions on public finance for children, and in doing so, we're going to answer 3 key questions: the what, the why, and the how of PF4C. So basically, What public finance for children is? Public finance for children, or PF4C, refers to UNICEF's efforts to work with governments in partnership with key stakeholders and rights holders to increase the transparency, efficiency, equity, and adequacy of public investments in children. The goal of PF4C is to remove PFM-related bottlenecks and barriers at national and local levels to ensure that children and their families have access to essential goods and services. And in doing so, it attempts to, it attempts to influence government policy and budget decisions, reduce spending disparities among different population groups, and apply value for money approaches so that children benefit from resources available to enhance their well-being. Why does UNICEF engage in PF4C? Basically, our work on PF4C is driven by Article 4 of the UNCRC that stipulates that country parties shall undertake all appropriate measures to the maximum extent of their available resources to implement the rights recognized in the Convention. While other partners lead on fiscal policy and PFM issues in general, there is a unique set of issues for which UNICEF has a comparative advantage. And basically, we have a rich sectoral experience and established relationships with social sector ministries. At the same time, we've got a history of child-focused technical assistance in the area of local capacity development. We are present on the ground and understand the pressing challenges faced by children, especially those living in most disadvantaged areas. And we have developed we have developed a culture of innovation, of integrating a child focus in mainstream methods and tools. How does UNICEF engage in PF4C? Basically, our engagement in PF4C may be displayed through a pathway of change. And here, we have developed a mix of three implementation strategies. The first is the technical assistance. Basically, this is the core of PF4C implementation, as well as the main driver of all key components. The second one is advocacy and policy dialogue. And we would like to say that this is the most common strategy used by UNICEF to ensure that child-responsive budgeting frameworks are in place and effectively implemented. And the third strategy is partnerships. We are working directly with our partners, key partners, the government, to contribute to the formulation of and execution of improved budget policies and resource allocation. And at the same time, we're working with our partners, with other partners from outside governments. When it comes to specific interventions and intermediate outcomes, basically the interventions can be clustered in three major components. The first one is the assessment, the second, engagement in budgetary frameworks and processes, and the third one, budget monitoring and tracking. Interventions under the first component, assessment, are aimed at generating evidence on the budget and PFM processes. So basically, we need this evidence base to create to understand how budget policies, frameworks, and flows can better support children and their families. And the most common interventions under this component include child-focused budget analysis, investment cases, simulations, and we have this experience in our region, costing, and financial impact scale-up. Interventions under the second component, engagement in budgetary frameworks and processes, are aimed at influencing overall budgetary frameworks and processes so that they are sensitive to child needs. And there are two most common interventions under these components. The first one is strategic planning. So UNICEF is engaged in planning exercises at both national and local levels. And these exercises can be, let's say, the contribution to the development of PRSPs or national development plans, or let's say sector and cross-sector plans, and etc. And again, we have this experience in our region. The second key intervention here would be budget frameworks, again, at both national and local levels. And basically, UNICEF is engaged or is contributing to the efforts of the government to improve their midterm expenditure frameworks or midterm budgetary frameworks, and etc. Interventions under the third component, budget monitoring and tracking, are aimed at measuring the performance of resource flows and informing how budget implementation can be strengthened to benefit the children. So the most common interventions under this component include public expenditure reviews or PRs, public expenditure tracking surveys or PETs, and routine child-focused budget analysis. So basically, as you see here, when implementation strategies are complemented by interventions, that leads to more transparent and high quality and great investments in children. And as a result, that has an impact on the fulfillment of child's rights. So basically, this is the pathway of change that guides our PF4C work, and this is how we're engaged in this important area. Basically, as someone mentioned in the beginning, PF4C is a bit new, well, it's comparatively new area in the region, and this area may pose some potential risks. In consultation with New York HQ, we have thought through this important aspect, and we have developed a set of some potential risks, which are basically the suggestions or some words of advice that country offices can take into consideration when starting their work on PF4C or already working. Basically, let's say one of the potential risks might be that PF4C interventions may fail to achieve the impact. And to mitigate this risk, country offices are advised to consistently invest in PF4C across the pathway of change. So basically to invest in strategies and specific interventions and to invest, let's say, in results. And here we're talking about both financial, human resources, and of course time. It's also very much important to maintain sharp focus on results. Processes are important, but at the same time, those are the results that we first of all need to think about. At the same time, it's also important to ensure that there is budget monitoring and tracking, regular budget monitoring and tracking, and that we effectively collaborate with our colleagues from other sectors, education, health, social protection, and etc. The other potential risk might be that there is a limited support from senior managers to pursue PF4C. To mitigate that risk, it's quite important to ensure that reps and deputy reps understand the potential of PF4C, and at the same time that they understand the important role that they play in this process. The other potential risk might be inadequate understanding and technical knowledge of public finance management issues and PF4C issues in general. And it's quite important that staff working on public finance or public PF4C issues are provided with opportunities and encouraged to develop their general and technical knowledge on PF4C. And last but not the least of the suggested risks would be the inability to gain access to key decision makers or access to data. To mitigate that risk, it's quite important to ensure that country offices foster strategic partnership with key financial decision makers and legislators. They also cooperate with international financial institutions as World Bank, IMF, African Development Bank, and others. And at the same time that they start local level relationships and actions. So basically, those are very quickly the key points that we wanted to summarize in this presentation. And now I'm giving the floor to Nima. Nima, can you hear me well?
Hi, hi everyone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. And in this part, I'm going to talk briefly about the evolution from medium-term strategic plan to the new strategic plan. An economic policy unit created in UNICEF during 2005-2013 medium-term strategic plan. So this medium-term strategic plan incorporated the main area of UNICEF economic policy, mainly multidimensional child poverty and inequalities, public budgets for children, social protection, and overall ensuring that national development strategies respond to children. Under the medium-term strategic plan, most country offices focused on addressing the part of the budget allocated for social sectors through approaches known as social budgeting or child-responsive budgeting. However, in recent years, this work stream has evolved to include the three key functions of public finance, mainly expenditure efficiency, distribution, and also macro stability. So in the expenditure side, the idea was to supporting allocative and operational efficiency of public spending. That was how the budget is put together and how funds are transformed into public goods and services. And also on the revenue side, the idea was to demonstrating financing affordability or consideration of the distributional aspects of public finance decision. For example, sector-based fiscal space analysis or child impact assessments of financing options. On the micro aspect of PFM, the idea was to advocating for an enabling environment, recognizing that the budget indirectly impacts children through multiple channels, including employment, income distribution, and price levels. And so, as you can see from this map, UNICEF's engagement in PF4C is now happening in around 116 countries around the world, compared to just 30 countries in 2007. And the aim of increasing the transparency, efficiency, adequacy of public investment in children. So this includes all types of country typologies, from extreme poor and fragile situation to high income, including NATCOMs as well. Recent growth in engagement in public finance for children reflects increasing realization that budgets are a main driver of disparities among children. What is new and what have changed over past years? Mainly under the medium-term strategic plan, UNICEF tried to respond to child-related PFM bottlenecks and barriers through public finance for children, social budgeting, child-friendly budgeting, and child-responsive budgeting initiatives. However, this has been changed under the new strategic plan that UNICEF's work on PF4C brings together, scales up, and kind of systematizes the equity focus of sector-based and cross-cutting initiatives to influence the budgetary frameworks and the PFM process for the benefits of children. These efforts aim to ensure adequacy, effectiveness, efficiency, and equity of public financial resources at all levels of governments. And also the new strategic plan highlights the key role of PF4C in all types of countries, typologies, as I mentioned, including the fragile context and also NATCOMs. It recognizes the importance of influencing subnational PFM processes where children's services are largely delivered. And UNICEF is more confident with its niche and role in PFM, PF4C. That's thanks to its past experience. We have a significant number of country offices engaged in PF4C and also identified the comparative advantages and the scope of PF4C issues being addressed that evolved during medium-term strategic plan, and also empower the strengthened human resources. It's maybe worth mentioning at this part that the Public Finance and Local Governance Unit at the headquarters has developed recently the PF4C Committee of Practice, which is part of the empowering and capacity building of the all country offices around the world on this area. This PF4C Committee of Practice aims to kind of capture and organize PF4C experiences and resources in a very searchable database. Try to identify and disseminate good practices and technical guidance on PF4C. It tries to foster dialogue and knowledge sharing on emerging PF4C topics from the field, and also enhancing learning and confidence to engage in PF4C. So we are glad that this new platform just recently developed, and we are going to send a global broadcast message during this week to invite all country offices around the world, all UNICEF staff and consultants who are interested and working in this area of PF4C for children. So I invite you all to join this platform. That's my part. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nima and Fania. And I think, the presentation highlights a couple of key points. The first of which is how, conceptually UNICEF is more confident in engaging in this area because of a wider and deeper range of experiences of public finance for children-related work. So, for example, while Article 4 of the CRC has guided our, very much our entry into this area, now it's not only about the allocation or of resources on children, but the quality of these allocations and expenditures. And we have experiences from around the world that have gone deeper into these areas, through budget monitoring, tracking efforts, detailed public expenditure reviews focused on child-related spending and so forth. So I think that's a very good, that's good for our region as we plan to scale up our engagement in this area, because we have a richer body of evidence and experiences and lessons to draw upon from. The second point I think that was also quite important is in terms of how public finance for children should be seen as a strategy and not just as one component. Fania, for example, talked about how there are a couple of components in public finance for children related work, but to achieve a result, we cannot only rely on, focusing on one element. And in particular, when we're talking about removing, barriers and bottlenecks related to financing for children, it requires, sustained investment in this, what we call, this pathway of change. So that's an important point. And I think also an important point that was raised is about how there are potential risks entering into this area, which is, of course, an area where we have now substantially more experience, but still, relatively speaking, we have a more niche role and a child-focused role to play to bringing the child angle to the fore on budgeting processes and budgeting analyses and so forth. So there are certainly some risks involved, and how it's important to be cognizant of those and, to try and take mitigating actions as best as we can. And from our end at the regional office, from HQ, of course, we stand by ready to support you when you are thinking about these risks and mitigation measures associated with them. Just to finally mention that the presentation will be shared with all colleagues after the webinars. We will also be sharing a more detailed note on the corporate directions on PF4C related work, which will give you a better, a more detailed idea of activities that HQ is also planning in terms of producing guidance notes on, technical topics such as public expenditure reviews, PETs, budgetary framework engagement, and so forth. So there's a whole series of knowledge, products that will also accompany the continued corporate investment in this area, and you will have a better idea of how to benefit from these resources on what timeline once we share this note with you. Now, my suggestion is that if there are any one or two really burning questions, we take them now. Otherwise, we move on to the next presentation on the needs assessment. They can unmute themselves. Yeah. You have the option of unmuting the microphone on your computer if you want to raise any burning question right now, colleagues. No? Okay. So if there are no significant questions at this stage, we shall move on to the second presentation, which also Fania will do, especially as she was the one who was most involved in undertaking this needs capacity assessment. So it's our chance to thank you once again for the time you spent in taking part in the survey, in the key informant interviews. And what we'll just try to do now is to capture some of the highlights. So this is by no means a very comprehensive presentation in terms of the needs assessment and the results associated with that, but very much highlighting some of the key themes that we saw emerging from the findings, from the surveys, and from the structured, the semi-structured discussions with a number of key informants. So over to you, Fania, just to take us through some of these highlights. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Saman. And I would also like to thank everybody for their feedback and for their contribution to this capacity needs assessment. So as we mentioned earlier, in the end of July, beginning of August this year, MENARO conducted a PF4C capacity needs assessment, rapid assessment, that was aimed at capturing the level of familiarity of UNICEF MENA staff on public finance and child budget related issues, and identifying technical and functional capacity needs in PF4C and key areas of required support. So in this exercise, we use both quantitative and qualitative methods. Basically, we conducted 2 online surveys, one survey for PF4C focal points and the other one for deputy reps. We received 21 responses to PF4C focal points, but 18 were valid. So basically, the response rate was something like 87%. And at the same time, 10 deputy reps responded to a shorter online survey for them. And these online surveys were supported by key informant interviews that we conducted with social policy focal points and deputy representatives from 6 country offices. Here I would like to say that all the findings that we came up with are basically the self-reporting, and they capture the perceptions of colleagues. So just a couple of words about the framework or brief overview of quantitative surveys. So we wanted to look at the roles and work experience in PF4C. At the same time, we wanted to understand what is the knowledge and what is the past learning or training on PFM and PF4C issues of our colleagues. And we were also interested in training methods. And once again, this quantitative survey were supported or backed up by key informant interviews and a shorter survey for deputy representatives. So what are the key findings? We found that basically 55% of our staff, of our colleagues working on public finance issues have never been trained on public financial management issues or on public finance for children, while 45 of our colleagues enjoyed such training in the past. Basically, those were the so-called mastery courses, social protection courses, or some sectoral courses like health economics and etc. Respondents who participated in sectoral training programs with PFM components incorporated felt that those programs did not adequately cover public finance related issues. The second key finding is that most staff trained on public finance management or PF4C issues find this knowledge relevant. However, they apply this knowledge to a limited degree only. And that was actually what 6 out of 8 trained respondents confirmed. So we think that it's a bit worrisome just to have this trend. The next key finding is that overall respondents who participated in this survey are comfortable with having some basic knowledge on PF4C. And almost 100% or 97% of respondents said that they are comfortable with some conceptual or some knowledge on conceptual framework of PFM or PF4C. They are also comfortable with reading and analyzing budgets and engagement in budgetary frameworks and processes. At the same time, for majority of surveyed staff, PFM and PF4C in emergencies and humanitarian context was recognized as a new knowledge area. Respondents also confirmed that they lack adequate knowledge in specialized tools like PETs and PRs, and here you can see the percentages actually of the responses. The issues of fiscal decentralization also a bit problematic, I guess, for our colleagues. We can say that in general, the surveyed staff ranks their ability to engage in PF4C as average. Here you can see on this diagram, it's almost 40% who think that their knowledge in PF4C is average, while almost, 22% I would say rank their ability to engage in PF4C below average, and almost 28% above average, which is also an interesting, very good trend. Basically, a significant proportion of respondents, and those are 12 out of 18 respondents, felt that limited internal capacity is the most critical challenge in promoting PF4C in those country offices. We try to understand what was meant. Basically, our colleagues are talking about limited internal capacity in terms of the number of social policy experts they've got in their country offices, or limited capacity in terms of technical quality, we would say, of social policy officers, or those ones who are engaged in PF4C. And here, of course, colleagues are talking about inadequate training or lack of training on PF4C that they really need. Respondents also felt that absence of government's midterm strategic and fiscal perspectives, along with weak or no political buy-in, limited institutional capacity, and political instability and insecurity negatively contribute to the promotion of PF4C reforms and initiatives in MENA. What is also interesting is that respondents have advised on a mix of additional bottlenecks that hinder effective promotion of PF4C in their countries. Basically, they were talking about non-transparent budgets and budgetary processes, lack of participatory decision-making, lack of limited funding to support PF4C initiatives, ineffective collaboration with IFIs, that was one of the common bottlenecks identified, and lack of UNICEF's credibility to engage in PF4C reforms. So those are the issues that all of us need to also pay attention to. When it comes to relevance of knowledge, UNICEF Public Finance for Children focal points prioritize above all their enhancement of their knowledge and skills in PF4C related programming. That was the first priority identified. The second priority is policy dialogue, advocacy, and partnership. So actually they want to improve their skills in that area. And so the third priority area was reading and analyzing budget and policies. Basically, those are like the key components that also inform our future plans when it comes to training of our colleagues. In terms of relevancy, our colleagues think that policy dialogue, advocacy, and partnership is the most relevant focus area for UNICEF's engagement in PF4C, while revenue management is less or no relevant. And here you can also see that basically the colleagues are saying that child-focused budget work is very much relevant, as well as financing social protection. At the same time, PF4C in emergencies, only in 3 out of 17 cases, but still was recognized as not relevant. And financing health, WASH education, and child protection was recognized as somewhat relevant. So again, some of the things for us to think about. When it comes to let's say the opportunities for PF4C in country offices, colleagues say that national demand, political will and support of national governments, as well as prioritization of PFM reforms are good opportunities for PF4C. At the same time, you can also see here that they also embark on the existing PFM reforms and let's say on a positive note, adequate institutional capacity in some country offices and strong donor support of social policy and social protection in particular could be also considered as opportunities to promote PF4C. In terms of training methods, of course, most of the participants, most of the respondents said that the most effective learning mode is the combination of online and face-to-face training. Okay, now we come to key recommendations. We distilled, I would say, 5 key recommendations that we can present here now, and a narrative paper would have a bit longer list of recommendations that you can also look at a bit later. So the key recommendation is that UNICEF needs to elevate focus on PF4C on a corporate level and to prioritize organizational investment in PF4C. And here we're talking about, of course, human and financial resources that the organization needs to invest in PF4C. At the same time, it has been advised to launch a regional PF4C learning program targeted at UNICEF professionals. It was also advised to strengthen the PF4C component of sectoral and other UNICEF learning programs, adapt tools and develop strategic guidelines for UNICEF's engagement in PF4C, and this is basically what New York is doing, and to identify niche and assess risks related with country offices' engagement in PF4C and develop respective mitigation strategies.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Fania. Just to take a few minutes to, highlight what we saw as the key points coming out of the needs assessment. It was very much centered around the issue, I wouldn't say about the quality of staff and so forth, but very much about the lack of opportunities to strengthen technical knowledge in this area for colleagues from the social policy side, from other sectors who are already working in public finance related, for children related issues. It was felt that there was a great need to refresh the knowledge and to update the knowledge in this area, and that came out perhaps as the key finding, and we could see that that had an impact in terms of perceptions of colleagues, in terms of their confidence to engage in budgetary processes, in terms of their ability to invest and engage in programming through evidence generation in investment cases, or in more complicated budget monitoring and tracking exercises and so forth. So essentially, the issue of the lack of updated technical capacity and strengthened technical capacity and lack of opportunities to strengthen that came out as a key issue. And from our end, we've already started working on, based very much on the findings of and the feedback of this needs assessment, on a regional public finance for children training program for MENA. And especially given the the rather unique context that we have in the region, we're aware that HQ colleagues are also working on a very extensive global learning agenda, but that will not take effect until the middle of next year. It's in the works right now, but there is a recognition that in the MENA region there is a need to have a more, with a more greater sense of urgency, an orientation training program on public finance for children for colleagues working in this area, and 2, to have it in a way that's contextualized very much to the realities of the region and our programming in this region. And our tentative, sort of look of this course is what you see on the slide in terms of trying to build, to explain the conceptual framework behind our engagement in this area in more detail, to strengthen some understanding of public financial management systems and reforms that are being undertaken in countries across the region at the moment, and in terms of elaborating some entry points and some strengthening of capacity in terms of communications and advocacy and partnerships to leverage our influence in this area. So this is very much something we're looking forward to, and we will be in touch with colleagues as we start planning for this in greater detail. The RFP for this course has already been issued, so if you have any good institutions in mind that you think can also submit bids for this training course, please do alert us and we'll share the RFP with them. But just to let you know that we have taken note of the key recommendations coming out and the key concerns coming out of the needs assessment and are working in that area. So unless we have one or any burning questions at this moment, I would suggest that we move on to the country presentation from Yemen. So if anybody has an urgent question at the moment, please feel free to unmute your mic and intervene. Okay, so it seems that so far so good. And we'll have an opportunity to discuss in more detail at the end of Yemen's presentation. But I now pass the floor to our colleague Butaina, who's been leading this very exciting work on the child budget analysis in Yemen at a time of great national reforms, with very strong strategic positioning of UNICEF through this work. And just to highlight that this is an emerging piece of work, but a very good example of how we can draw lessons from this type of work happening in the region in terms of how to position UNICEF strategically, and hopefully also an inspiration to all of us across the region. Butaina, over to you.
Thank you, Saman, and thanks to Fania and to everyone us today. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Hello? Yeah, you can. Okay, thanks. Okay, so basically the presentation today is just to highlight the process that we took in Yemen to finalize the child budget analysis. And basically, I'm going to go very quickly on key areas, especially the findings. I'm not going to spend much time on the findings, but we can send you the full presentation. It's almost 35 slides after we launch the study next week. So basically, just to give you a background on the child budget analysis in Yemen, it's a collaborative approach between UNICEF and the government. It was a long process because we started in January 2013, and it included several phases. The first phase was basically to have a dialogue with the Ministry of Planning and International Cooperation, MOPIC, on the importance of the exercise itself, because MOPIC was thinking to start a social budget review rather than a child-focused budget analysis. So we had to engage in that dialogue and basically to prepare for the whole process. This was followed by establishing a child budget analysis steering committee, and it was established with an official decree from MOPIC in 2013, and then followed by the selection of the technical committee members, which are basically researchers, very senior economists from academia, as well as from MOPIC and Ministry of Finance, and then finalization of the inception report. After all of the preparatory phase, we started the actual study with the data collection from the different line ministries, and then followed by issuing and drafting the reports and reviewing by the steering committee. And of course we just finalized it towards the end of Ramadan this year in July 2014. So basically it was quite of a long process. The key objective of the child budget analysis, mainly it has two folds. First is basically to assess and analyze the size adequacy and the trends in child expenditure, and also to identify the gaps between allocations and actual expenditures. And the second basically is to review the policies and practices of Yemen's budget and the expenditures of the ministries and relevant agencies. This is very important because in Yemen, this is the first child budget analysis to be done. And, our idea is basically to have a cross-sectional view on what's going on with allocating and spending on children. And just to highlight on the formulation process, because it was very important in the context of Yemen, because budgets are closed. Transparency issues is an issue. We have the situation is complex, and basically having access to what we call the final statements of budget expenditure in Ministry of Finance and in the sectoral ministries and government funds, it's very difficult unless the government is the lead and all the sectoral ministries are involved. So that's why it was very important that the lead is the government, represented by the Ministry of Planning, and also co-chaired by Ministry of Finance, who had a key role, and that was at a high level. For example, the steering committee was represented by the deputy of MOPIC, as well as deputies of finance, education, health, social affairs, which under social affairs there is the Social Welfare Fund and Disability Fund, as well as the Social Fund for Development, and the Ministry of Local Administration, the Higher Council for Motherhood and Childhood, which is also a government committee, as well as from civil society, the Child's Rights Coordination Body, and with participation of UNICEF. For the technical committee, as I previously mentioned, we had senior economists from academia, and the team leader of the technical team is also the advisor for the Parliament on economic issues. So we were keen to have someone who is respected in Yemen to lead the process. For the methodology, the study did not only focus on the midterm expenditure framework, which sometimes it's the case in many countries, but we looked into the actual expenditures. And before starting even the inception report, the research team did have a deep review of all the existing child budget analysis that have been conducted, especially supported by UNICEF. It gave really very good information. But the key, I think, or I don't say it's a new thing, but, for us in Yemen, it's a new thing, is not only to analyze and look at the midterm expenditure framework, because always there are discrepancies between what is planned as NTEF and what is actually allocated by the Parliament in the beginning of each year, and what is actually what is the actual expenditure. The data sources of the study relied mainly on what we call the final statements of the state budget and the MTF. The final statements of the state budget is basically the final real expenditure of each ministry, which is finalized and approved by the Parliament as the final expenditure. So the research team, just to emphasize, did not just look at the MTF or the planned figures. It was a sectoral approach, looking at 4 key areas: education, health, child protection, and social protection. Under education, it was the Ministry of Education, but as well as the Ministry of Technical Education and Vocational Training, and the Social Fund for Development and Public Works Program. health, it's mainly the Ministry of Public Health as well as Social Fund for Development, SFD. For child protection and social protection, it was a little bit more complex, especially for child protection, because you have different ministries. You have Ministry of Social Affairs and Labor, and then you have Ministry of Justice because you have juvenile justice under them. You have Ministry of Interior because you have the birth registration programs, and then you have the Youth and Adolescent Care Fund. For social protection, it was mainly the Social Welfare Fund, which is the main part, as well as SFD and Disability Fund. So what were the key findings? Just to highlight and then to present some of the figures. 14.3% of the annual total expenditure was on children, and this is an average between of 2009 till 2012, which represents on average 4.8% of GDP. And the annual child share from the total public expenditure is around $120 US per child per year in all sectors. By sector, what we found, it's true, it's 14.3% of total expenditure, but 12.3%, which is almost 86% of the total expenditure on children in Yemen, is on education. When you look on health, social protection, and child protection, the share is very, very small. For example, on health, it's only 1.2% of the total expenditure, which is only 0.4% less than half of the percent of the GDP. For social protection, it's only 0.6% of the total expenditure. And for child protection is the least, which is only 0.1 and 0.04 of GDP. They all reflected annual growth from year to year. However, we see, I mean, it's relative because it increases from year to another, but the absolute amount is still minimal, especially for health, social protection, and child protection, compared with the huge share of education. I'm going to only show one of the slides, but before I highlight this slide, just want to say that the study did look into the utilization. And this area was a major interest for the Ministry of Finance, especially even the deputy himself, because he was saying, we don't want just to assume that the actual expenditure is not enough, but we want to see if after the Parliament approves a specific allocation for the ministry, were they able to utilize all the amounts? For example, for the Ministry of Vocational Training, they only absorbed around 25% of what was allocated to them. And, the rest was not allocated. So basically, just to highlight, in summary, the key results. Around $1.5 billion is the average expenditure, and you can see in the slide we have the MTEF for 2013 till 2015, and we have the different shares of the agencies. The social affairs, because the classification of the what we call the functional line in the Ministry of Finance, under it you have the Ministry of Social Affairs, the SFD, WF, they call it social affairs. So you see the share of child expenditure on child education 86, health 9.1, and child protection and social protection together is 4.7 of the overall expenditure of children, which is 1.5 billion. So what has been the key lessons learned for us? one key lesson learned that the government actually, when we were discussing in the last meeting with the steering committee, they were all saying that it did open their eyes on what budgeting for children means. For example, the Deputy Minister of Finance, he was saying that he never thought that so little is being allocated for children, especially for health and social protection and child protection. That by itself means a lot for us as an advocacy entry point for future. So in a nutshell, the process itself is as important as the end result. Because we started in 2013 and until now, and for us it wasn't just to get the result as soon as possible, but to ensure that everyone is on board and to use the process as capacity building for everyone who's involved, but as well as real advocacy venue for the decision makers, because they are key decision makers, especially the Ministry of Finance, of course, and other ministries, but usually Ministry of Finance in Yemen plays a very important role in allocations. Also, ownership of the final result has been very important, and we feel this ownership, and also we are going to launch on November 2nd, but I think this ownership is just because they were the ones who did the study. They, the decree on the steering committee, the formulation of the technical committee, the participation, the peer review by the different ministries of the results. So we feel all of that had led actually to the ownership of the whole process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Buthaina, for a very illustrative and interesting presentation. I think your final point in terms of the importance of the process and the ownership and the power of evidence in terms of even an initial analysis that's well done but thoroughly done, and in terms of how that can change perceptions of policymakers in terms of how they view budgets and for children, or the role of UNICEF even in terms of work like this is I think is very, very well noted. Thank you very much, and all the best for the launch. Now we'll open the floor up to colleagues for any questions on any of the presentations. It would be great if you could quickly identify yourself before presenting your question. Thank you.
Okay, Saman, can I start?
Sure, Buthaina, please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Fania and Nima, for your presentations. I think the assessment on PF4C was really a powerful piece of work for country offices to go forward. I was wondering what would be the approximate timeline rolling out the training, and is it going to target only the focal points or the specialists working on social policy, or is it going also as a starting point and then roll out to others, deputy reps and other program people, or are you going to start like selecting a combination of both?
Buthaina, let me actually take that very quickly. I'm sorry that I didn't make any mention of the timeline. By an accelerated timeline for MENA, we were referring to the end of Q1, early Q2 next year. So that's in terms of the timeline. In terms of the orientation of the course, the MENA, the regional course for MENA, for now it's very much geared towards colleagues, especially colleagues from social policy leading the work on public finance for children in their respective offices, but also a bunch of other staff to whom this knowledge would be extremely relevant. So we're not aiming to expand the group too much, because this is very much the basic capacity building or the strengthening of capacity in this area. So we would like to focus on a smaller group, but of course we're open to suggestions. But also just to note in that context that the HQ learning agenda, and maybe Nima can also elaborate on that a little bit if he feels the need. The HQ learning agenda will have more specialized modules for program staff from other sectors. So the aim here is to have a minimum base of capacity within offices in our region in a MENA-specific, MENA-adaptable sort of manner. So we're hoping to have this orientation course targeting a smaller group of staff for the time being. And then the HQ course, if I remember correctly, also has a component for managers, deputy representatives, and so forth. So I think we will, through the combination of these various approaches, we will cover a good portion of the staff across the organization. But for us, it's very much an issue of having a basic, a minimum amount of strengthened capacity in our offices across the region. But we will be in touch with you as we start drawing up plans for the course and planning for it in more detail. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, please let us know.
Perfect. Just to add a very quick question.
Yeah.
I think, the initial document on PF4C assessment, and there is also a PowerPoint presentation. I think it would be excellent if we have it in Arabic to start discussing with our partners. The pathway of change, it was very well illustrated, just what also Fania touched upon today. It's very important to have it in Arabic at this stage to, to set the stage, because it takes time to, basically discuss with the partners.
No, very well noted. And Nima, would you have any initial feedback on that? Is this something that you're considering, or it's something we could also take into consideration?
Yeah, thank you. I guess mostly my colleague Matthew Cummins is working on that, because he's also currently in Barbados going for this similar training there. So, but on my part, I'm mostly working on the capacity development issues for the country offices, which mainly my focus currently is this online platform committee of practice, which also we organize this webinar series. But I don't know, we can consider that partly as the online kind of training, peer-to-peer learning or not. But on the other side, I'm not sure exactly how Matthew is developing that. So maybe we can, I can add that and continue the conversation with Tanya after the webinar.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Hussaina. Any other colleagues?
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, Isam?
Yes.
Hi. Go ahead.
Hi. I have 2 points for Yemen experience. Thank you first for the presentation about the Yemen, and it was very exciting, the outline of the study and the presentation. I just want to know if it's what you actually, the figures that you put in the end of the presentation, it was mostly when you talk about education and when you talk about health, that means what was allocated actually for the Ministry of Education or just allocated for education in general. For example, we know some international donor like USAID or something, they might allocate also funding for education. This is included or not? This is the first point. The second thing I would like to ask, if the money allocated for education, it's you didn't go in details what items, if it's money allocated, for example, for the Ministry of Education, what item inside the Ministry of Education is, how this money is divided inside, like partly about the printing books or salaries for teachers or the staff. Is that clear?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Okay, for your first question on whether it's only government funds or donor contribution, sometimes it's the combination of both, as long as it was directly funded through the Ministry of Finance, because these are final statements by the government in the Ministry of Finance of what has been the expenditure of the different sectors. For example, if there are parallel programs and funded directly to Ministry of Education.
Butaina? I think we've lost you there. Isam, can you hear Butaina?
Can you hear
Sorry,
us?
that was an electricity cut.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so basically these are final statements, budget statements by the government. So for example, if it was a grant or a loan, but directly from Ministry of Finance, then it is in that budget. But if it's parallel programs, then it doesn't show. For your second question, the results are very detailed. We have a 35 presentation, and we have another 78 presentation, and but because time does not allow today, but in summary, for the Ministry of Education, 85% goes to salaries. Only 15% goes into the other goods, services, operational cost, improving quality. And this is a major issue because it doesn't give that much flexibility, especially if there are shocks. For example, the fuel subsidies, the budget cuts, then the quality of the operational cost and the quality of the training, etc., gets severely affected. What I can do is I can send the link of the full presentation in English because the actual report is still in Arabic, and then you can see what are the budget items within each ministry.
Thank you,
Is that
Butaina.
okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, this has answered my points. Yes, thank you very much. It will be good to share it even in Arabic, to study it in Arabic. So it's a good examples that some countries, they are actually taking these steps.
Okay, sure, I will do that.
Excellent. Any other colleagues? Leonardo?
Hi everybody, this is Leonardo. Yes, just first of all, I would like to thank you, Butaina, for the presentation, and for sure we are interested in the final, in the document, just to have an internal reflection and take an example of Yemen also for other countries. In terms of training needs, I agree that we can focus on the social policy colleagues, but I think also we should have also people from the sectors, because also other sectors are working on budgeting, and budget is very relevant for them. So it will be good to have also, colleagues from child protection, health, and education, because they are more and more working also on budgeting issues. And in particular, we should invest on national staff, because the international then, at a given point, will leave the country. So we have at least to consolidate and have a group of people working on that. Because I have to admit that there is the risk that then the person which is trained is working in isolation in the office, and it's important to have other people to reflect and to work together. A reflection on one of the results of the survey is on the limited capacity that the country office have on the area. It's for sure it's a need of new knowledge, but also we have a limited capacity in terms of time to allocate to this additional, to say, area, which is strategic and very important. And it's something that we are currently doing, but not in a systematic way. But most of our, the work of the social policy focal point or chiefs or officers is limited because our work is crowded. So this is going to add to our work, which is perfectly fine. But we have also factor that, in particular, from the regional officers review the capacity in terms of time of staff, which are currently, I think, and the experience of other colleagues I discussed it with, is a bit crowded. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonardo. Let me just start off with a few reflections on that, and then Fania can also take the issue on the survey. No, very well noted indeed. The issue of involving other sectoral staff is something, as I said earlier, which we will very much take into consideration. It's just that I think we would need to have a smaller and more focused group. So that would mean that I think that what we're leaning towards, and at this point, is having sectoral staff who already have some level of engagement or likely to engage in PF4C related work, but certainly not only having social policy officers is the idea at this stage, although a smaller group would make it more meaningful as an orientation training. The point on the involvement of and strengthening capacity of national officers is extremely relevant, and it's something that we'll strive to achieve when we plan for the training and we issue the invitations and encourage countries to confirm participation. On the issue of the additional area of work, I mean, I think with the needs assessment, two things become clear. One is what you can do in the short to medium term, and one is a longer term issue. The longer term issue is the issue of staff numbers. I don't think we are in a position at this stage to discuss, especially given our budget projections going forward and so forth, unless we can secure other resources, for which again we need to show some evidence of budgetary work. So it's a vicious cycle in some ways. That's a longer term issue that needs to be discussed country by country, context by context. In the short term, the issue of capacity, even in opportunities that engage when you do sectoral programming, not for the sake of doing PF4C work, but if you're doing health programming, child protection program, social protection programming, in our case, like with the subsidy studies, there are opportunities to engage and make use of PF4C related knowledge and capacity. So I think the aim for now is to strengthen the ability of staff to engage in these existing opportunities more meaningfully and more substantively through courses like the orientation course that we're planning at the moment, while a longer term issue of numbers is not, it's not only related to the issue of whether we engage in PF4C or not. It's actually even in other areas, because of the nature of the social policy posts, for example, we've been discussing this for some time. It is an issue, and I think we would have to leave that for a discussion once we are able to organize, say, a regional network meeting when the new advisor is on board, and with participation of management from across the region. So I think it's useful to put it in that perspective. Fania, any thoughts on the survey?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of words. Basically, many respondents were saying that it's quite important to engage colleagues from other sectors, from education, child protection, health, and etc. in PF4C work, because as you, Leonardo, said, basically, otherwise social policy officers will be some sort of working in isolation, and it's cross-cutting and sector-based actually work. This recommendation is taking into consideration, and that's why one of the recommendations actually in our presentation was to strengthen the PFM or PF4C component in other sectoral training. For example, training on the health-related issues and child protection and social protection. And this is the issue that will be further discussed with our colleagues in New York. As far as I'm concerned, basically they are already working on that, and the global training program on public finance for children issues will also be touching these issues maybe slightly. But this is, the issue that New York is also paying attention to. Thank you.
Leonardo, I don't know if that addresses your queries for the time being. If there's anything else we can help clarify.
No, it's fine. No.
Okay.
Can I come in here, please? This is Jeremy from Yemen. I'm with Husseina here.
Hi, Jeremy.
Hi. Yeah, just on this point that you're discussing at the moment,
Right.
and I haven't been here throughout, by the way. I missed the presentation, but I'm aware of what Husseina's been doing, obviously. I really don't see, in practical terms, that the social policy officer has much of a role in actually changing this. I mean, she or he has an indirect role, but the advocacy and the support to planning needs to be done by the program sections. I'm reiterating what you're saying, and that needs to be in the job description of any section head. If he or she is not able to engage on budgeting for any given sector, for his own sector, then he's not fulfilling his job as a chief of section in UNICEF. And I would say the same for the deputy representative. I think it's absolutely a crucial part of the TOR of the deputy representative to be engaging on this. So social policy can do all the research and analysis and generate the debate, but the change has to come through the sections. Anyway, this would be for larger offices anyway, where you have enough staff per section. So it's all very well this conversation taking place in social policy, but it's not going to get anywhere. We're not going to see changes in budgeting unless that discussion is brought to either or to the deputy reps and or to the program sections. And in all your networking meetings that the regional office convenes, I would have thought this should be an absolutely top of the agenda for any given sector when they're having a networking meeting, is how to engage on this, because unfortunately it's not part of the skill set of the average chief of section. They prefer just to get on with the sort of service delivery and implementation side of things, but it's not good. So I guess my suggestion is that you need to influence through Hanan and through Gita and others that this gets taken on by the deputy reps and by the program sections through other fora, to the point where it's not even really led by social policy, if you like. I think social policy can only do that's it.
Jeremy, we're losing you there.
That's because I finished. I was just saying that I think you need to get this debate fairly and squarely, or otherwise we're not going to see. We're just going to see generation and analysis of data, but that's not good enough. Over.
Right. No. Thank you, Jeremy. Very thoughtful and extremely useful suggestions and reflections. And actually, this is one of the reasons that when we, the point on the capacity of sectoral section chiefs and particularly deputy representatives is very well noted, and it's actually one of the reasons why we had also requested and opened up participation to this webinar to deputy reps. In fact, particularly starting off with the line managers who have program coordination responsibilities, who would of course be the deputy reps in this case. And I mean, at the end of the day, yes, you're right. The influencing of budgets happens through sectors. Where we do see a role for social policy, I think, in my personal view, would be in terms of having an incubator sort of role to start off the process, to other sectors in thinking about engagement in PF4C and so forth. So, for example, if we're planning PETs in education, there needs to be a minimum level of capacity, expertise, the technical capacity in the social policy officer, at least to support even the education sector to take that forward, while at the same time, you're right, in terms of accountability and the job description, in terms of moving the agenda, utilizing that sort of evidence would fall squarely on the shoulders of the sector. So it is a point that we really take note of. When we have the opportunity, for example, to drops meetings and so forth, to bring this agenda and in meetings, in network meetings of other sector colleagues, we'll certainly try to bring this to the fore of the agenda to the best of our abilities. It's just that for now we're just starting off more engagement in this area. So we're trying to build I'd like to say a critical mass of colleagues working in this area, and very much the idea is to expand as we go forth, especially with sector leads from other sectors who will do the heavy lifting in terms of influencing budgets in their respective sectors.
Just add a couple of words.
May I?
I just want.
Sorry, Leonardo.
Yes, no, but it's just to reply to Jeremy in the fact that I am quite in disagreement with him, because I think that in any case the social policy should keep the lead, because we are the more technical, how to say, people to deal with the Minister of Finance, because at the very end the budget is channeled from the Minister of Finance, that he can keep a certain control. And there is also some expertise that maybe is not with the deputy rep. The deputy rep should be aware. I think my proposal was to involve the program units, because it's about their work and they have to, how to say, to be strong in the issue, but the social policy should be the leader.
No, I mean, a very important point, Leonardo, especially in terms of engagement with, quote unquote, super ministries like the MOPICs and the Ministry of Finance, where, our sectoral colleagues would necessarily not have the link, and it's still critical to maintain a role for social policy in that regard. And, in terms of the JD of deputy reps, especially, one could say, in small middle-income country offices, this sort of profile, having this element in the JD, in the profile of deputy reps, I think is quite important. It's a discussion that's actually been ongoing, Jeremy, for some time in the region. Even when Roberto was here, and I think in the next, whenever we have the chance to have a network meeting, it is something that will, feature at the top of the agenda.
I just wanted to add a couple of words. Basically, UNICEF has experience already of adding a social policy component to job description of deputy reps. As far as I'm concerned, in the region of CECS, in most of the middle-income countries, deputy reps, they have a social policy component in their terms of references, and this is something that we've got at the organization, and we can also kind of experience in our region as well. Thanks.
Jeremy, if
can I just come back on that? So I think we're all in agreement, but I believe that we need to extend that to beyond middle-income countries, where it's a painful add-on, if you like. We have to do this work, even in poor countries. We can't leave it aside and just get on with service delivery, otherwise we're not going to make sustainable change. In practical terms, yes, you can do your bit there. I think we, the social policy officers who are on this call, I don't get two reps if there are. We need to push drops agendas and these kind of things. And also, when we are somehow copied on petitions for other central network meetings, health, nutrition, whatever, it has to be on their agendas. And if the regional officers, regional advisors could put this on their agendas, then we'd start to see our sectoral colleagues take it seriously. The question is, do all our regional advisors and sectoral colleagues have the skills? Well, maybe not yet. We have to start, and social policy is there as, let's say, quality control, and will provide the tools as Leonardo, as you pointed out. I think that's it. Yeah, thank you very much.
No, Jeremy, again, I think very much taking note of that point, and whenever we get the chance to bring this up in meetings like the drops, in discussions, not just meetings for the sake of meetings, but in drops, RMTs, and especially as this agenda scales up with the good work that we've been doing on social protection already, I think it creates the opportunities to bring up the issue of this particular element in the profiles of key JDs. So I think it's something that we'll take up with other colleagues like Geeta as well in terms of discussing further. Any other colleagues?
Yeah.
Isam?
Yes.
Please.
I have one quick thing to ask about the regional office. If there any country office is doing such a study as in the stage of preparing the budget, not tracking the final product of the budget, but what's during the planning time?
During the planning time, not. I mean, bit of a stretch, but Jordan might come, not exactly during planning time, but to influence planning, I would say, Sam. Jordan does in 6 ministries now. They do child budget analysis at the end of every year. So in some way, it affects the planning for next year. And there is some level of scrutiny on the child budget in these 6 ministries every year. So they've institutionalized the process, but given how their attention has been diverted due to the emergency, the Syria response, and so forth, they've not really found the time to take this further. But I think the next logical step in Jordan's case would be taking the evidence from these yearly child budget analyses that's institutionalized in the 6 ministries, and to use that evidence to influence the planning processes in the next year. They're installing more dedicated capacity. The person should be here in the next few weeks, so I think it might be something that they might wish to consider, but no explicit case, at least from our region, in terms of that. But we could certainly check with HQ colleagues in terms of what other cases exist. But that is quite an advanced level of engagement, where you need to have significant credibility to engage in that respect.
No, I just want.
I have another point.
Please.
Yeah, that is actually coming from the two things. Coming from the presentation about the child protection, about the budget analysis in Yemen, and also it was the same analysis when it comes to Egypt, and also the situation analysis in the children in the region, the whole. The worst sector, it have all the problems in the region. It's the field of the child protection. So, and part of the problem is actually there is no institution structure responsible for the child protection. As Hussaina was putting, there is a lot of, it's very complicated to even to track the budgeting. So it's the problems of coming as very low budget allocated for the child protection. As a result, at the end, most of the disaster in this country is related to child protection. And so this is something that we have to think about it more deeply a little bit with the persons, with the program officer responsible for the child protection. What can be done to improve the budget allocation and to improve the institutional responsibility for the child protection? Because I think they go hand in hand, and it might be part also, it could be one of the exercises can be done during this training. It will be useful because education, we know there is a Ministry of Education, and they are fighting for their fund and the allocation, and the Ministry of Health the same. But this is nobody is fighting for the budget allocation for the child protection, and there is no, and the situation actually, most of the situation analysis in every country in the region, it have a problem about child protection issues. So this might be worth to try even during this training to focus in the area it's most difficult, not most easy, like education, allocation more money for education or health. This is just an idea, I don't know.
Isam, it's actually a very relevant point, and one of the things that we hope to have in the training, in the last module especially, and with the preparation, with the other modules leading up to that, is to have some discussion, brainstorming on an indicative public finance for children roadmap, per country, and not to take up with the government tomorrow, but at least internally how we strategize about utilizing the strengthened capacity. What areas do we focus on? So essentially, if we are focusing on, you bring up this very relevant point about how child protection is a key issue. In many countries in our region, although it's the most chronically underfunded one, with no clear structural entity responsible for it and so forth. So it might actually make a very good case for you working together with your child protection colleague in preparing for this training, participating together, and then working on an indicative roadmap based on both of you attending the training. So that's a sort of synergy that we hope to cultivate as in the training itself. So there is certainly room for that, and we hope to advance planning in that regard. But it's very much a relevant point and something we're very keen to look at and explore further in the training. So not just having the training to strengthen to boost your knowledge, but in terms of trying to find linkages where this knowledge can be applied in conjunction with program colleagues. So one option that we could certainly consider is having participation of the social policy officer with at least one sectoral colleague who is most interested and engaged in the public finance for children sort of agenda, so that it makes more sense to draw up an indicative roadmap based on that type of collaboration.
Yeah, and if I may, I just wanted to also refer to the global stocktake on PF4C, which New York issued last month. Basically, this stocktake has information on global experience in this area, and there are some interesting examples from all the regions. Basically, Issam, you can also go through this document and maybe identify the experience that you would be also interested in. Thanks.
Any other questions, colleagues? Issam, I don't know if you have any follow-up query to that, but I think we're running short on time now. We've taken up already an hour and a half, but if there are any final questions?
Thank you.
No, just to thank everyone from my side.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time, and we hope to continue this discussion. I think there's certainly a lot of follow-up discussions to be had after this. This is just the start of a process, as I was explaining. It's not the end of the journey for us in this regard, but we will certainly be in touch with you with a summary note on the corporate directions in public finance for children, and also the document with the full findings of the capacity and needs assessment. And your comments on those two would be very welcome, as well as your comments as we start preparing for the public finance for children, the regional training next year. Thank you very much, and thanks so much to Nima, who's joined us from New York at a very early hour.
No problem. Thank you for organizing this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Lovely presentation.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Goodbye.